Hello everyone, I'm Tom, and in this video I'm going to show you how I created these spooky zombie crypts.
When the moon is high and the shadows deep, the dead awake from their restless sleep. To sate their hunger they take to their feet, searching for a feast of living meat.
This project started when I wanted to spruce up my apple picking 28 board and give my newly painted zombies some scenery. If you're not familiar with apple picking 28, it's part of a wonderful collection of non-combat games over on the non-combat tabletop Discord, founded by an awesome chap called Hydra. Links in the description. The movement was started with the aim of making tabletop games less killy and competitive, and more child-friendly. I've been playing apple picking with my 7-year-old and she loves it. These crypts started the same way the majority of all my builds do. Sketches, then Adobe Illustrator. I created a whole bunch of templates and printed them out. These are then glue-sticked onto graphics medium chipboard, serial card and some 5mm underfloor XPS as required. I've noted down which template goes on which material in the template links in the description if you fancy taking a crack at these yourself. As these crypts are my first attempt at building something non-sci-fi, I didn't really have a clear plan. I wanted them to be ancient looking and made primarily of stone, so I made sure to texture the XPS with tinfoil and spend some time on edge chipping, damage and general aging. The main body parts came together really well. These were all glued with wood glue, and I only ended up with a few small inconsistencies that could be easily age-related degradation or just covered with moss later. Once the glue was dry, I began adding the roofs. The flat roof was very simple, but I had more issues with the angled roof. The templates for the undersection went on well, and the cutout for the cross worked a treat, but the shingles were another matter. When I drew up my templates I had them all worked out, but this was one plan that did not survive first contact. I ended up gluing them overlapping much more than intended and ran out of pre-cut shingles. The fix was easy enough, but I did feel a little stupid. Fortunately, the extra rows of shingles improved the look of the roof, so it all worked out. Next up, I wanted to add a little more adornment to the outsides. I wanted some knocker type things and hastily threw some together. They look fine, but are definitely part of the build I regret not putting a little more time and effort into. I also added plaques and other simple elements that would be painted as weathered copper for more contrast and detail, breaking up the monotony of pure stone. After this, I decided to try something else new and have a go at carving stonework into one of the crypts. Now, I'm definitely not a builder by trade, but I do have some experience building walls in the real world, and this came in really handy. I've seen a lot of people do this carving, and whilst you can do it rather randomly and get away with it, it always catches my eye as not quite right. The simplest rule here is to ensure that much more often than not, the layer above doesn't share vertical joints with the layer below. The pattern is first cut with a sharp knife and then traced over with a pencil or pen to widen out the gaps. This was a long and somewhat tedious process, but overall enjoyable. I liked the challenge of sticking to the rules of believability whilst keeping the stonework varied and interesting, and I was really happy with the results. Next, I snipped off the overhanging shingles and began adding rivets for extra surface detailing. At this stage they were looking really good, but I had one more idea I wanted to try. Unfortunately, I did this completely off camera late one night with some leftover green stuff. I sculpted some folded script and a skull to add some extra details, which were then press moulded so I could create more at a later date if I wished. I then primed the whole set white to give me a better starting point for light grey stonework. You can see some of the sculpted bits on the back of this script. I started off blocking in all the stone with a light warm grey mixed from cream and grey, making sure to work the brush into all the recesses and get a good solid finish. Once this layer was dry, I set about adding some tonal and colour variation to the stone. In the end, this turned out to lack a lot of contrast as I played it a bit too safe with the variation and needed to add it back in later on. But hey, you live and learn. After the paint had dried, I painted the doors brown, the shingles a nice dark blue grey. Then I came in with a targeted dirty brown wash. I wasn't too mindful with this, but did take care not to get it everywhere. The stone then got a jolly good dry brushing, starting with cream and ending with selective dry brushing of white. Next was adding the copper. I wasn't 100% sure this was going to look okay, but I was really happy I did it. Adding some shine against the dull stone adds a lot. The copper then got a weathering and shading from the same dirty brown wash, which nicely brought out some detail and broke up the large, shiny, flat areas a bit. To finish off the aged look of the copper and add more colour interest, I added some verdigris. This was mixed up from some light blue and light green, heavily watered down and applied somewhat sparingly. I'm not sure I quite pulled this off. I think this works in the sense that it adds the colour I wanted, but I don't think it really sells as proper, authentic verdigris. This is when I realised my stonework had lost a lot of its colour variation and added some back in with a glaze of warm orange-brown that really brought it back to life. With all of the painting done, the build was looking good, but needed some finishing touches. I mixed PVA with water and flock in my favourite X Play-Doh mixing pot until I had the right consistency. As I applied the moss, I was always thinking about the weight and balance of the design. It's a real balancing act of not pushing it too far, or adding too much to any one spot, while still using it wisely to cover up some of your building transgressions. As a final touch, I dry brushed the moss light green, and added some tufts and birch tree seed pods as leaves. I learnt a lot building these, but as my first attempt at non-sci-fi terrain, I'm really happy with them. Maybe I need to make some cool Mordheim scenery now. See you next time, YouTube!